Lawsuits, loot boxes, and the lottery. What do all these things have in common? EA is currently at the center of it all. Today we're going to talk about some of the history of microtransactions, the psychology of them, and why EA will cling to this practice with their dying breath. And we're going to add a bunch of math just to really paint how much money they can make a company. While microtransactions have been the talk over the last few years of gaming, with EA being the worst of the worst offenders, believe it or not, they didn't start the practice. No. The first microtransactions go all the way back to 2006, when none other than Bethesda released the first quote-unquote microtransaction for The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. Costing a whopping $2.50, who would have thunk that almost 15 years later it would be its own business practice? It's important to note that the very first documented microtransaction in console gaming was a piece of horse armor that was done as an experiment to see how players would react to paid in-game DLC. Spoiler alert, the reaction was bad. Overwhelmingly, players hated it, and with good reason. Players felt that $2.50 was too much for a single set of armor. But in that sentence alone, we can identify the problem. What the microtransaction was a failure. The idea of the microtransaction was a success. Players weren't opposed to the paid DLC, they were opposed to the cost versus return of that single microtransaction. Even before then, Microsoft had toyed with the ideas of microtransactions as new revenue streams for the company. The idea was simple, and honestly, it wasn't all that absurd. DLC and paid DLC had been a thing for a while. Remember those $15 to $20 map packs for games like Call of Duty and Halo? Yeah, I remember not being able to play Chinatown and Modern Warfare without buying the pack either. I also remember sheepishly asking my father for $15 for one map pack when 3 of them were available, just so I could play more of the game. Microsoft said it would be a boon for players who didn't want to buy the full pack available, but still wanted pieces out of it. Let's pause for a minute and think about that and the general thought process of the consumer, and throw in some psychology behind it as well. There's a relatively famous old psychological experiment involving one of America's most delicious snacks, popcorn. Essentially, the experiment was examining consumer patterns with certain decoy items. In the curious case of the popcorn experiment, it was relatively simple to set up. Give one group an option between a small popcorn and a large popcorn priced at $3 and $7 respectively, and give the other group the option between small, medium, and large popcorn priced at $3, $6.50, and $7 respectively, and compare the results. Notice anything yet? If you said, "Hey Buck, the price of the medium popcorn is absurd, I'll just buy a large," you would have been a lovely participant for the experiment. If you said, "Forget that, I'll just buy a small," well, stop screwing up the point I'm trying to make. The point of the experiment was to trick people into buying more or even the most expensive option because of using a decoy between the actual options. And it worked. While people would still buy the small, medium, and large options, people would lean toward the large because the logic was, oh, it's only 50 cents more. This logic can be directly applied to the origin of microtransactions. Sure, you'll have a portion of gamers who really only want that one DLC item out of the pack. It's the distractor. You can look at buying one item for $2, or you can buy the whole pack of items for $10. Simulating value for the consumer because more is always better, and you're paying less per item. And now that we've set the stage for the world of microtransactions and why they work, we're going to skip a few years of moving from cosmetic to in-game advantage, looking at you, Advanced Warfare, and going into gambling, a practice even older than paid DLC for kids. Now, before you click off on this video and leave a comment calling me stupid, hear me out. When you were a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid before the years of video games and a worldwide pandemic, you probably picked up a pack of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon cards. Whether you realized it or not, you were gambling. A gamble can be defined as taking a risky action in hope of a desired result. So when you took that lemonade stand money and didn't have a Karen asking for your vendor permit, you went to a comic book store and bought a pack of Pokemon cards, and you hoped you grabbed a pack with a holographic Charizard. You gambled. You paid money for the hope of getting the card you wanted, and I'll gamble on the fact that you did it more than once. However, Western game developers didn't catch on this trend until the mid-2000s, most notably with Team Fortress 2's loot box mechanic. People would earn crates through normal progression and have to buy a key to open it. And the same thing happened with CSGO and opened up the games to rich and diverse trade websites for items acquired that could simply be purchased by players who wanted them but didn't want to have to gamble on the loot box to get it. Now here's where the gamble truly is. You earn a loot box through progression, you purchase a key to open it, these items were cosmetic and each crate was earned through progression, so no big deal. Well, maybe not until the items earned gain realizable market value. Simply put, items could simply be bought for real-world money. Sticking with CSGO, a Karambit skin could go for $2,000 USD, where the AWP Dragonlore Sniper skin went for a whopping $61,000 USD. Attaching real-world value led to tangible basis for the idea of gambling. You would pay $5 for a key, and the items in them could be worth nothing, or could be worth as much as $61,000 in CSGO. Another apt term for this is jackpot. And who has jackpots? Casinos. Casinos are the hub of all hubs for gambling, but we already knew that. So let's take a look at the CSGO trade and see if we can actually call it gambling. Let's take a slot machine for simplicity's sake, and we'll say you have to pay $5 to give it a spin. That $5 is going to be our anchor for whether we win or lose, meaning anything more than $5 gained from the pull is a win, and anything less is a loss. You put in $5, you get 15. That's a win. You put the 5 back in and get nothing. That's a loss. You put another 5 in and get nothing. That's a loss, and now you're at break even. So you put another $5 in and get nothing. And now you're losing money and the casino wins. Welcome to gambling. And if you've never been in a casino, you may have missed the most dastardly trick they use to keep you spending money: bright lights and flashy sounds. And humans are kind of like moths. We like bright colors for no other reasons than it draws our eye. It attracts us to the slot machine, coupled with the sounds of money flowing and music to let you know how good you're doing. These are all done for the express purpose to make you spend money. And then lastly, we can look at the probability tables in a casino. For simplicity's sake, we'll use a deck of 52 cards standard. We want a royal flush of spade, meaning we have one way to hit the jackpot, and this will be our jackpot in this case. And skipping all the boring math and calculations, we can say that there are about 2,598,960 possible combinations of cards that can be dealt. We only want one of them. So our odds are 1 in 2,598,960, which is equal to about 0.00385%. If each hand dealt cost $1 and the prize for the royal flush was $1 million, statistically you would have to spend $2,598,960 to guarantee that you get that prize. And that's only if no repetitions were allowed in the set. This is how casinos make the big bucks, because every single time, meaning that for every deal, you're no closer to actually hitting the jackpot. Of course, if you spend enough money and time, you'll eventually get it, but it's important to note that there is never a guarantee of you getting it. Now let's look at EA's loot boxes, better yet, FIFA's Ultimate Team. From lawsuits, which we'll get to later, to revisions to not have the practice shut down completely, we're going to look at the most recent iteration of loot boxes, aka the card packs. EA has called them surprise mechanics, but where's the surprise and where's the mechanic? Like casinos, EA uses random number generators for each pack opening that tells the game what cards to pull. If you're in the statistical sample, where that number magically means you get messy, lucky you, but the odds are pretty far out there. Anyway, here's a pack opening animation. Do you guys notice anything that might seem similar to a casino? Bright lights and sounds? Check. Real world money option to purchase? Check. Less of a chance to get the jackpot as opposed to other available options based on probability? Check. Intrinsic and extrinsic value to winning? Check. Sure looks like an online casino to me. Now that I've exhaustively talked about how EA is running a casino, let's talk about it some more, with even more numbers this time. So going back to our probabilities, let's use FIFA as an example. The current FIFA 20 roster has 17,000 possible players, graded from 0 to 99, with the average original squad when you first start hovering around 55. The goal of the game is to build the best team possible, or to push players to the coveted 99 number overall. Easy, right? Well, let's see. The true odds of getting a Messi in a pack is 1 in 17,000, or about 0.5882% chance per pack. Now, that was a little high for EA, so they had to adjust it down by only making it available in some packs. So we also have players from the pool that come from things like Team of the Week moments, Hero Cards, Flash Cards, Moments, End of an Era, Record Breakers, Man of the Match, Ones to Watch, Ultimate Scream, Road the Final, Foot Miss. Whew. Out of breath. Because of this, I'm going to liberally increase this to about 25,000 individual cards you can possibly get. The new true odds of that coveted best card are about 0.4%. It's technically better than getting a royal flush, however, we need to go back to what we said before about statistical sampling. Every time you open a pack, the odds are calculated based on a pack, and a random number generator tells the game what card you're going to get. The fallacy is that people think the more packs they open, they'll be guaranteed better cards. There is never a guarantee you'll get one because it's random based on a statistical sample for that population only, meaning that card pack only. This means every time you open a new pack, the odds are reset to true neutral. But let's look at the difference between EA's loot box and a traditional casino. As we said, casinos' buy-in is the money you put in creating the set point you need to receive from that gamble. The amount you need to win is directly related to the money sunk into that particular pull of the slot, deal of the deck, or roll of the ball in a casino. This is where EA is at their most clever. You can't buy cards with real dollars. You have to purchase in-game currency. Think of purchasing gold tokens at a Chuck E. Cheese and welcome to the rat race. With your newly exchanged currency value is no longer set to the money you invested, but the card in your deck. The money you spent for the currency is now a sunk cost. If you spent $10 on 10,000 credits, that is $10 forever gone. And say you can buy one pack for 6,000 credits, mostly because I don't play FIFA and don't know the actual rates for the various packs, that 6,000 credits cannot be earned back. It can only be spent. In addition, you now have 4,000 credits that are useless unless you buy more currency because the 4,000 left over is less than the price of entry for the next pack. So the value of the pack is no longer linked to the currency used to purchase it. That pack is now directly tied to the current cards in your roster. Your current roster becomes the new basis of value to you. A brand new team will always be made better by buying packs, creating a positive reinforcement loop to buy more, because you'll consistently improve your team in all aspects, leading to easier games and more wins to your ledger. What people, especially children, fail to see is that each time you improve the roster, the bar for what's better just moved up, meaning each pack implicitly has less value per card, because every card is no longer going to make your lineup better due to the probability tables. But EA was clever enough to know this and have already reinforced the idea that buying packs will make your team better. They bank, literally, on the fact of getting you early on to the idea and buying more packs. Then you're in a loop of chasing the next great card. So let's have an example. Say you have a team with an overall rating of 55. If you're always guaranteed a 70 or higher player out of a pack, you can guarantee that every pack you open will objectively make your team better. On the flip side, if your team overall is 80 and you buy a pack that only guarantees a 70 or higher player, there is a chance that the pack opened will have no impact on your current roster, if only because you wouldn't consciously make your team worse. And with how EA ropes you in, we can finally answer why EA does this. Simply put, money. If you don't believe me, here's some more numbers for you. EA is a publicly traded company, meaning that they have to show their sources of money in their financial statements. Luckily, my day job is an accountant, so I have to read this stuff daily. In EA's 2020 fiscal year, they eclipsed $5.537 billion with a B dollars in revenue. Of that, $809 million came from game sales on console and PC. However, $2.813 billion of that same revenue came from microtransactions within those games. Microtransactions comprise over half of EA's net revenue, coming in at 50.8% of that net revenue number. What's more though, microtransactions generated almost 3.5 times more revenue than actual game sales did during 2020. Microtransactions are a direct result of a game. They can't exist without them. What this means is for every $60 game sold, EA is making $208 per copy, adding nothing more than in-game purchases to an already complete game. Some other metrics we can look at is the increase of microtransactions from 2019 as a percentage of full game downloads. Microtransactions increased by $597 million from year to year, and game sales increased by $129 million. Percentage-wise, revenue from microtransactions increased 27% and sales revenue only increased 19%. What this means is that revenues from microtransactions are outpacing actual game sales. Extending this, we can say that microtransactions as a business line is actually a more profitable venture than selling real games. Still can't see why EA loves their surprise mechanics? What about that class action lawsuit over FIFA that amounted to $5 million? That lawsuit came as a direct result of microtransactions. So let's compare what they made in those micros to what they had to pay because of them. As I said, they made $2.813 billion in 2020 from microtransactions and paid $5 million in lawsuits related to them. The impact of that lawsuit related to the revenues was a whopping 1.78%. And with that, EA will hold on to their loot boxes to their dying breath until it starts costing them more than it makes, or they're outlawed completely. EA hangs on to manipulating kids and adults alike because it has proven to be overwhelmingly profitable. They will continue to do this until the lawsuits pile up so substantially or the regulations have stiffened so substantially that it is not feasible to include them anymore. The biggest problem is there's no real way to make it cost more. They're baked into the game so deeply that the costs get absorbed everywhere with no discernible impact on whether to include them or not. But consistently, microtransactions make up more than half of EA's revenue stream, and it has grown to be its own business line. If EA could release a game where they did no work and still make boatloads of money, Oh, wait.
Jackson gonna take it himself. Spins inside the 5. Dives for the end zone. Touchdown, Ravens!